Really delighted this afternoon to have with us Helen Lorraine Nkocha, who is the head of youth at the TB club in the Faroe Islands. Delighted you're with us, Helen. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey in grassroots football and youth football.
Well, I played up until 2010. I played at the top flight back home in England, and then a couple of the divisions beneath that. As you do, as you're getting older, you start to drop down the levels, most of us. My coaching started with the Centre of Excellences back home in England, and also with grassroots clubs, men's and females. So I did a wide range of coaching whilst I was back home in England, like most of us have to do. Different clubs in order to make one wage packet, or different clubs in order to get enough coaching experience to feel a bit more confident in what we're doing. So mostly back home in England, playing for 23 years, coaching elite female side, academy, and also obviously some male players as well. Then I moved overseas to continue my coaching.
All right, so you were in the USA and now you're in the Faroe Islands. How did that work?
Well, I was working in Chicago, and one of my friends who was in the Faroe Islands reached out to me and said that he was aware that one of the local clubs was looking for a head of football. So obviously with our pandemic, things were really, really challenging in Chicago. We had really high rates of people suffering with the coronavirus, and obviously you're looking at the numbers and health-wise. Healthcare in the US is very expensive. You need to have a very good package. I didn't have a particularly good package, and the job here was very attractive. A lot of scope for development for myself, as well as obviously developing a program at a professional club. So that's what brought me to the islands. I'm the first female head of football that the country's had.
Terrific, terrific. So you must have had a lot of experience yourself in grassroots programs, getting kids into football, getting girls, getting boys into football. What's been your biggest, if you like, pleasures or successes and about developing grassroots programs?
I think it's got to be when you first find a player that maybe they're not even really that interested in playing football. So trying to adapt how I speak and how I recognise a player. So I was one of the players that I really enjoyed working with was actually doing athletics when I first saw him. So he was running he was in his school athletics team, and you just sort of recognised some of the traits of an athlete, a young competitive person who loves being part of a group, loves being active, and then you just try and engage them. You see who they are and see whether you can take those characteristics and give them a football at his feet and give them friends, a new friendship group. And so that's my favourite experience in grassroots, because I took him from athletics to a football team.
And you presumably had quite a lot of experience of seeing the growth of girls' football, particularly in South London, yeah?
Yeah, although it was quite a while ago now, because I haven't been back home for about 6 years.
Yeah. But when you went to America, the club you're working with there, what particular grassroots programs were you impressed with that they were doing? Yeah.
Well, back in the US, they have the rec programs anyway. So they have the rec programs for the players who can't necessarily, or the families who can't necessarily commit financially to club soccer, because obviously club soccer is very expensive back in America. And also the families or the players who who don't want to commit, that they don't want that level of intensity which you do get with club soccer. There's a lot of travel that's involved because of the makeup of the leagues and the country. So the recreational side was actually, it's a great way, because you actually do see some real little gems playing recreational or pickup games. So the recreational soccer or football is a great way to find different types of players.
And what's been impressed you about the grassroots football, or indeed all youth football in the Faroe Islands?
Well, in the Faroe Islands, it's a lot of fun for the, which is completely different from where I come from. So in America, it's very, very competitive in terms of the, not just the participants, but everyone involved, that they come and sit down with their big chairs and big cars and get the food out, and it's a real activity for everyone, but it's very serious. Over here in the Faroe Islands with the youth football, they're still restructuring, they're still doing a lot of work with the golden age, which they've identified as being players between the ages of 9 to 11. So there's still a lot of development that's taking place there in the early stages. And so I think because of that, it's a little bit more light-hearted. It's a lot more family orientated and a lot more fun. So it's the atmosphere when you're watching a game, or when you're, for me, I'm watching the players to see what they are doing. The atmosphere is completely different from where I come from.
But they have some really high participation rates in the Faroe Islands, don't they?
Yeah, one of the challenges is they love the outdoors so much because it's such an incredibly scenic place. It's so beautiful. A lot of volleyball, a lot of rowing, horse riding, ping pong, and they love their football immensely. They're very patriotic people. So yeah, there's a high participation, but because of the climate, there's a massive challenge. So it's very, very windy here.
How do they manage to make it financially sustainable? Is that through government grants, or is that all paid by parents? How do they make that work?
The government they've very, very, very savvy, very clever with what they've done. So they give a portion, they contribute a portion of money to the children taking part in sports. And all the children have to do is decide which sport they want to take part in and when. And then it's down to the clubs to work together with the other sports to avoid conflicts. So you don't want football taking place and it overlaps with volleyball. So we try to make it so that we are a bit more connected with each other, but the government do contribute.
All right. So the club gets a pro rata amount for each kid that they register for football, yeah? Oh, yeah. Right. And presumably that is both boys and girls, particularly in the Faroe Islands, yes?
Yeah, that's correct. The women's football is you've got a high participation rate in that as well. We've got successful women's team, and our female program is fairly strong. We've just had another U15s female selected for the national team, and so we've got quite a strong commitment to the female side of the game as well.
And does the participation extend into teenage years and adult years and even as senior citizens? How does that work?
We have a senior football team. We also have games each year for former players, so the over 35 put on exhibition game with our local rivals. Now, the challenge that we have here is that obviously with being where it is, a part of Denmark, there's a high fishing community. So by the time our players reach 18, they're looking at going to college, and they tend to go to Denmark. And then maybe they'll come back, but they tend to be then involved in the fishing industry. Mm. It's a very stable career, and they can get a really good lifestyle from being involved in the fishing industry versus being a football player, where you may be far away from your family and you may not be guaranteed an income.
Yeah. From your experience, what are the biggest hurdles that the programs you've been involved in with clubs? What are the biggest hurdles that they've had? Have you noticed in getting kids into football? What are the biggest problems that you've found in actually getting kids into football in the various programs you've been involved in?
Well, I worked in Shanghai for 3 years, and in Shanghai, the culture wasn't about football. The culture was about education, and obviously they're nationalistic. They're very proud, but to encourage families to take time away from their family schedule to allow their child to take part in football training sessions, which became because of our program football sessions where you're looking at 5 sessions a week with players from the age of 6 to 16 because of what we're working towards. So the challenge there was cultural because they didn't have that high value on football as a career. So in America, the challenges were really, it was because there's no set way of how they follow their development programs. So obviously back home in England, we all follow what the FA's guidelines are, which is not necessarily the case where I've worked.
And you've worked in other areas. You have a connection with Nigeria. Where else have you worked?
Well, I'm Nigerian. I'm the ambassador for one of the clubs over there. So what I do there is I try and help them out with some advice about coaching and promoting some players. Worked in different states in the US, New York, Michigan, Chicago, California was my last state before I left for Chicago and then the Faroe Islands.
So how does the club in Nigeria operate? Is it a big club? Do they have grassroots football?
It is a grassroots program, but it's a men's team. And what it is my cousin was a national team player. And what you do in Nigeria, everyone can play. Everyone knows the game. Everyone understands how to play, how to compete. But the structure is what's missing. So Nigeria, the club that I'm working with, they have got some very good technical players. They've got some very good courageous players, but because the structure for the tactical aspect of the game isn't quite there yet, it means that it's very difficult to then go on for those people who want to make a career because they can't transfer their playing into a more structured environment.
So what advice would you give to someone who's doing this course, who's thinking of starting a grassroots program, a club, a holiday program, whatever it is to involve kids? From your experience, what advice would you give them?
You have to be really open-minded and you have to have a growth mindset. You've got to start to think differently to what you already, maybe what you did as a player. So I've created programs based on just one area of training and I've made that into an entire program, because maybe players enjoy it, but they only ever see 5 minutes of it at a training session. So you've got to look to expand the player's experience, maybe think about what you enjoyed when you played, or what you see your players enjoy the most during part of a training session, and you can grow that.
What sort of things do you find that players like about a training session, or does it differ?
I think when you relieve the pressure, you've got to, I think you have to punctuate pressure for players, so they don't want to have pressure for the whole duration of the session. The players that I've noticed enjoy the sessions the most when we're doing like fun things, and then you put a challenge in. So just try to punctuate the amount of pressure that you place on all of the players, regardless of their potential.
Any mistakes, Helen, that you've made or you've seen made that you would advise people to avoid when they're involved in grassroots startups?
Yeah, I think maybe just think about how it looks to the player. So sometimes you might just be working for too long. So just try and think, well, hold on, we've been doing this for 10 minutes, or we've been doing this only for 5. Like, are you working at a rate that allows the player to enjoy it, allows the session or the program to get the most out of what the aims are? So just think about the timings that you're working and what the purpose is. Keep the purpose in mind.
Great. So Helen, if you're happy, if anyone has any questions following up this interview, when we launch the course, are you happy that they contact you with some advice? Because you obviously have a wealth of experience, yeah?
Well, that would be fantastic, because that's a good way for me to keep learning as well. Thank you, Dan.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for the time being, Helen. Thank you.